He is gazetted. And so I cannot have any sentiments in the matter and have somebody who's not gazetted come and say, I am the Bawku Nabatu. And so I have to do what I have to do to ensure peace in Bawku. And so government recognizes the role of chiefs in governance, especially at the local government level. Chiefs will influence over the people and have a role to play in resolution of conflicts, in local development. You are the wise councils, behind governance at the local level. You mediate all kinds of issues, including husband and wife quarrels, resolve cases of theft of goats and sheep and all manner of local and traditional issues. And so I want to commend our chiefs for the role you've played in preserving the peace, particularly in your communities, because all of us recognize that without peace there can be no progress. And that is why every paramount chief or every ruler must work to ensure that his traditional area is peaceful, so that government can make the investments that will create opportunities and prosperity for our people. And so I want to thank you for your role in maintaining the peace. While the chieftaincy institution is one that is indispensable in maintaining the peace, the institution itself sometimes is the cause of conflict in many cases. There are traditional areas where there's peace, there's a chief that is respected, he's been on the skin for 2, 3, 4 decades. The instant the incumbent traditional ruler passes away, then succession becomes a major problem. And sometimes when it happens, the area sees no peace for a very long time. And so we need to find a way where the rules of succession are followed. In the past, we knew clearly what the rules of succession were. If there were gates, we know which gate is ready to take over the scheme. But now, sometimes when there's a vacancy, the kingmakers, everybody knows that it is this particular gate's turn, or it is this particular person's turn. Sometimes because of wealth and, let me just put it bluntly, bribery and corruption, kingmakers go and take money. And then the person who is not the legitimate successor, they force to put the person there. And it naturally results into conflict. And sometimes even the conflict is within the gate itself. It is that gate that is supposed to take over. But deciding who in the gate should succeed also becomes an issue. And so we urge the regional houses of chiefs and the National House of Chiefs to deliberate on this in order that we are able to resolve these conflicts. In the past, government was allowed to interfere in the institution. But we realized that government's interference caused more problems than solved the problems. And so the 1992 Constitution spelled clearly taking government completely out of matters to do with chieftaincy and gave the authority to the chiefs themselves to do your own peer review and peer resolution of chieftaincy and succession. And so government has no role to play when it comes to succession because the Constitution completely takes our hands out of it. Results in a disturbance of peace and law and order then government has the duty to intervene and ensure that law and order is maintained. There's the reference that was made to the relative peace that is coming back to Bawku. We're not out of the woods yet. The confl1ct committee was established by my predecessor, Nana Akufo-Addo. And so in his handing over notes, he mentioned to me that he had invited confl1ct to mediate in the conflict. And so as his successor, I was duty-bound to allow that mediation to go on. And I want to thank confl1ct again for the role that he played in mediating the conflict. While the mediation was ongoing, there was violence, killings. It's estimated about 119 people lost their lives in the period of the mediation. But thank God, ultimately, his report came out. And the mediation process was meant to work to find a traditional resolution to the conflict. And the thinking was that we could get the parties to the conflict to, in a traditional manner as was done in the past, find a way to accommodate each other. Unfortunately, I think that didn't happen. And once it didn't happen, then the mediator had no option but to revert to what the law says. And so his report basically, stated what the lawful position was. And I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the Republic of Ghana. And so I cannot be sentimental in terms of implementing the law. And everybody knows what the law states, that the truly gazetted chief of Bawku Naba is Na Abugrabo Azoka. That is what the law says. He is gazetted. And so I cannot have any sentiments in the matter and have somebody who's not gazetted come and say, I am the Bawku Naba too. And so I have to do what I have to do to ensure peace in Bawku. Which is what we've done. The law is the law. And so it's not only Bawku, there are other places. You have the Bawku Chieftaincy dispute. It's been adjudicated by the Judicial Committee. And our hope is that when the Judicial Committee takes its decision, we must implement the decision. It is not in anybody's power to say, yes, it has taken a decision, but I don't agree with the decision. And so I also am imposing myself as a rival chief. If we do that, we would have chaos all over. And it's not only in the Upper East, there are many other places. Recently we have Sampa has become another problem. Sunyani, there was a long reigning chief. As soon as he died, conflict over the chieftaincy. And sometimes it's not even chieftaincy, it's land, issues of land, borders and disputes over land. But in all this, we must recognize that violence does not solve the problem. Because we no longer live in the jungle where it's survival of the fittest and that the strongest is the one who rules. You can fight as long as you want. It will not solve the issue. And so we must always go by the law or go by arbitration or go by mediation. Those are the only options left to us. You can be of two ethnic groups, you can shoot each other, and you cannot eliminate one ethnic group. And in these days and ages, there's a law against genocide. If you commit genocide, you will face the law. And so let us make peace work. And it's only when peace works that we'll be able to bring progress to our people. Now that relative calm is coming to Bawku, I announced a 1 billion Ghana cedi fund. And we call it the Bawku Restoration Fund. And so that fund is supposed to speed up development in the 6 districts that constitute the Bawku area, to be invested in roads, to be invested in roads, health facilities, educational facilities, irrigation dams, income generating projects and all that. And I intentionally made the Minister of Finance the chairman of the committee, because he's the one who has to provide the money. If he's the chairman, the money will come quickly. And of course, other members include the Honorable Majority Leader, who's an MP from the area. And so it's my hope that the committee will be inaugurated soon and it will begin its work. The 1 billion is to be disbursed over a 3-year period. And so they will identify what the projects are, where the projects should be, and the funds will be allocated. It will go through procurement, contracts will be awarded, and people will start working on the projects for the Bawku Restoration Fund. We are investing $10 billion over 5 years in big push projects. A lot of the money for the big push is going into road construction. And so, for instance, we want to connect the Upper East to the Upper West through Tumu, from Bolga through Navrongo and through Tumu all the way to Wa with a first-class road. I know that road well because that's the road my father used to travel to visit his friend Imoro Igala in Tumu. And somebody said, our grandfathers and our fathers didn't do it. If you don't do it, he will go to heaven believing that that road will never ever be done again. But we're serious about it. We're broken it into lots and giving it to different contractors so that we can speed up the work. The President of the House of Chiefs mentioned development, and that is our focus. We know that the Upper East region has very great potential if we put investment into it. We're currently working with the tomato farmers, introducing a special variety of tomato which has more flesh. The traditional variety that our people are used to farming is the watery type. Once you crush it, it's all water, almost 80% water and only 20% meat. And so there's a new variety that is more beefy with less water, and that is good for processing and preservation, for making tomato puree and all that. And so as I speak, under the Ministry of Agriculture, our Feed Ghana program, the vegetable component of it, the experts are working with the farmers and giving them that new variety. Once we start to produce that new variety, we're also scoping the Pwalugu tomato factory. We need some additional equipment to make it fully functional. That will not only produce the tomato products, but will also be able to package it for the market. And so that is being worked on. And I hope that soon I'll have the opportunity to join you for us to reactivate that factory. We also are looking at the Pwalugu multi-purpose dam. It is at an estimated cost of almost $1 billion. It's 900 and something million dollars. It's quite a big project. And so the strategy we're trying to adopt is to begin the first phase. It's in 2 phases. One phase is the hydro power, and the second phase is preparing the irrigation, the land for irrigation. And so we're looking to see if we can start the first phase, which is preparing the place to put in the dam to produce electricity. It's estimated that it can produce up to 60 or 70 megawatts of power, but it's been designed as a hybrid. And so there's going to be a solar component of it, which would also produce about another 30 to 40 megawatts. So in all, to make it economically viable, it has to produce a little more than 100 megawatts to be viable. And so we're looking to break it into the two phases, to start the hydro part, and then the second stage will be to develop the canals and put in the pumps and prepare the land for irrigation. That should be able to bring not less than 10,000 hectares of land under irrigation. But it's also for flood control, because its catchment area is supposed to be a very big weir. And anytime it's a rainy season before the Bagri Dam is opened, we will spill out some of the water in the Pwalugu Dam, so that when the water comes from Bagri, it will retain a lot of it without overstretching and destroying people's farms and houses. And so we also recently sent a delegation to the Upper East to inspect the land for the Bolgatanga Airport. They've confirmed that the site is good, and recently, by courtesy of the majority leader and his members of parliament, they approved a new airport infrastructure development levy. And so the airport is to be funded out of that levy. And so very soon I will come and will invite all of you, and we'll go to the site and cut the sod for the start of the construction of the airport. We're also looking at areas where water supply is difficult, so that we can enhance the water systems to produce more water for our people. We're also continuing with the rural electricity program. The minister made allocation for rural electrification in the budget. And so the MPs are all looking at their areas that are not yet connected. And once that is done, we're using our own funds. We're not taking any loans to do the electrification. And so our own contractors are the ones who are going to be contracted to do the connections to the national grid. And so I want to thank you as custodians of our culture, and to say that we will continue to work closely with our chiefs. We will continue to work to improve your conditions so that you are comfortable to be able to continue the work you're doing. Indeed, you suffer more than us, because you are right there amongst the people. Your palace is right amongst the people. They only just have to walk to reach your palace. If they have been eaten, is your problem. If their wives are sick in hospital, is your problem. He's impregnated his wife, but you have to go and pay the cost of the childbirth. His wife has given birth. He impregnated her, but you have to pay for the outdooring. And so we know what you go through. And your minister is here. He's already announced some of the enhancements that we have done to the little allowances that you get. We know that it is not at the level that all of us are satisfied with, but I can assure you that as we grow and expand the economy, and the economy gets better, we'll be in a position to also enhance the allowances that we pay to you. And so I want to thank you. I think this is what I'll say for the meantime, and to thank you for the visit, and to also announce that I'll be coming around. We are designing our usual government accountability series. And so I'll come together with the ministers, all the ministers, to all the 16 regions. We'll call the Regional House of Chiefs and all the stakeholders. And if there are any things you think government should do, you can draw your attention to it. and we also can tell you what our policy for the region is and what we're doing in the region. We'll come for a day or two. The first day would be to go around and inspect government development projects ongoing in the region. And the second day will be the dialogue where we'll sit together with you and we'll discuss the development of the region. So we'll visit all the 16 regions. Once we've done that, they will do the district version. And so that will do the government accountability CDs in the district. And so they'll call the chiefs in the districts, the stakeholders in the district, and discuss the development of the district. And so I won't say goodbye to you because I'll be seeing you very soon as we start the series. Thank you very much. God bless you.